Welcome into Sports Memo's betting podcast for Tuesday, June 11th. We got Andrew McGinnis on, and we're breaking down week one of the CFL. CFL football season is here. You can check it out on sportsmemo.com. Get Andrew McGinnis's full CFL service there up and available. McGinnis, welcome into the podcast. How are you?
Hey, Drew, I'm doing great. I'm fired up. Can't wait for this week. It's going to be a great one. How are you?
I'm good. It's always fun when football season is here, and it's starting on Thursday, June 13th. We got Saskatchewan and the Hamilton Tiger Cats in Hamilton. It looks like the Ticats laying 2.5 at home. We got a total of 48 or 48.5, depending on which sports book you're shopping at. But McGinnis, you looking to get involved in the opening game of week one of the CFL season?
I am, and it's interesting. You look at the opening game; it's always really exciting. Everyone's interested in trying to find some way to get involved. But the past couple of years, I actually haven't really been involved in the opening game. But this one kind of did stick out a little bit. Not my favorite play of the week, but definitely some great options. And they're opening things up in Hamilton at Tim Hortons Field. Some people like to call it the donut box, which I find kind of interesting. But you look at this game here; you got kind of the tale of two of the same stories here, Drew, where both of these teams were both eliminated in their semifinals, in the playoffs. And I just don't like the way this Saskatchewan team looks this year to start. I feel like there's too many question marks. I look at Zach Collaros. This is they're calling him Zach Collaros 2.0 in a lot of the newspapers in Saskatchewan. And the reason why they're calling him that is because they're expecting much, much more from him and much more consistency. But he's coming back from injuries. He suffered injuries in the past, and he also had a bad concussion that left him out of the playoffs last year and late into the season. So hopefully he stays healthy this year. It's interesting, though, to mention he had 9 passing touchdowns, but 13 interceptions. So it's always hard to kind of look at a ratio when you have a couple more interceptions than touchdowns. But interestingly enough, they had a 10-4 record when he was playing. So obviously he was able to lead that team, with a good record. But looking at this here, we open it up. It's a pretty close spread here, -2.5 home favorites for the Hamilton Tiger Cats. And I'm going to take a look at Hamilton here on the spread. I look at this team, and overall, I just like what I've seen from the receiving core. They're running. They're mostly a dominant throwing team. They're not really a team that likes to run the ball too often. You've got a quarterback in Jeremiah Masoli that is just outstanding. Last year, 5,209 passing yards, 28 TDs, and 18 INTs. And you got a guy like Brandon Banks, top wide receiver for Hamilton, 94 receptions for 1,423 yards, 11 touchdowns. And just behind him, Luke Tasker, 78 receptions for 1,100 yards. I mean, this is a talented receiving core. And this is a team that's, you haven't really seen too many changes from them this year. That's kind of what I look for, Drew, in the first couple of weeks in the seasons, because some teams are seeing a lot of changes from them. And change can be great, but change also takes time to settle in. And that's why I like this Hamilton team early on in the season, because you got a solid foundation, a solid core, a solid coaching staff, and a quarterback ready to lead his team. So for me in this one, I'm looking at Hamilton Tiger Cats, laying the number with them on 2.5 points. But I'm also looking at the total in this one. Over at 5 dimes, we're seeing 48 as the total, and that's very, very low for a CFL total. And you look at these two teams, they actually really picked up their scoring late in 2018 season, and the trends for them, their last in the end of the season, Saskatchewan ended it going over in 4 of their last 5 games on the road, and Hamilton themselves in 5 of their last 6 going over the total. So I expect a really, really fast-paced, non-stop game here. They're going to go down the field a lot. Both these teams have a lot of deep threat receivers, and I really do expect to see that. I think this will not be a slow game to start the CFL opening game. So I expect a really exciting game, Drew, and a high-scoring one as well. So we're laying the points with the Ticats, and we're also going with over the total.
All right, and we got Saskatchewan coming from the West Division, heading to the East Division in Hamilton here. Where exactly is Saskatchewan in Canada, McGinnis?
In Regina, so very West Coast, very much so in the prairies, Drew. So when you want to talk about a fan base that's going to come out and support their team in the West Coast, it's going to be it's going to be Saskatchewan, and they're going to be a team that's really going to have a lot of great fan support and come out. And, so it's a decent travel spot, but like you said, the season's just getting started, so I'm not really too concerned about that. But I do say that that's probably the reason why Hamilton is just, a few points favored here in this one. I look at this one as more of a pick 'em, but I do think that Hamilton, when it comes down to it, can step up and cover the points there with the 2.5. So it should be a great game. Don't get me wrong, but I feel like Hamilton has what it takes. They have the experience, and like I said, they have that receiving core that you can really rely on and trust, to get the job done. And like I said, they don't run the ball too often, but they can run the ball. And a guy like Sean Thompson-Erlington, he's a guy that's going to lead them rushing wise, and I'm comfortable with him. He's a guy that's not going to average 6-7 yards per carry, but he's going to be a solid foundation for them with the run game and should be a good threat. So the way that this Saskatchewan team ended their season was very impressive. They picked things up. They started things off very, very slow, Drew, in the 2018 season, but the more they picked things up and the more they got comfortable with their play style, they seemed to kind of adapt to a faster game. Whereas before they were a really big under team, they ended their season on an over note. And I think you and I can both agree 48 is a very low total for the CFL, which is why we're going over the posted total.
All right, and guys, you can check out sportsmemo.com for McGinnis's full season CFL. He's also got an opening week special up, $100 off, just $99. No coupon code needed for that. Also, the early bird special for McGinnis's CFL. McGinnis, you know that coupon code off the top of your head?
Yeah, the CFL 299 opening week. You can get my entire season, $299.
Man, that's under $300 for the full season. CFL goes all the way through
21 weeks.
November. 21 weeks in the Grey Cup in November. So long football season here. Football season getting started before college football and the NFL. Good primer here. Way to build the bankroll. We got Montreal at Edmonton Eskimos up next. Looks like the Eskimos laying 10 at home. 51.5 being the total here. Alouettes traveling to take on the Eskimos. 9 p.m. Eastern time. Friday, June 14th. What are you thinking second game of the season here, McGinnis?
It's an interesting one because it's been easy to fade Montreal over the past several seasons. Drew, this is a team that hasn't had a winning record since 2012 when they went 11-7 on that season. So easy to look at things here and say, hey, look, let's just fade the Montreal Alouettes. But 10 points, it's one of those ones. I found this a very interesting number they laid out there, the odds makers, because you've got a lot of new faces for this Edmonton Eskimos team, which makes it very interesting because, like I mentioned, sometimes that can be an issue. Sometimes you look at some new guys adapting to a lineup like Trevor Harris, the quarterback coming over from Ottawa. How will he adapt to his new roster? A guy like Greg Ellington as well, new team, new atmosphere, new plays. How will he kind of figure things out? And they also have some injuries as well with Tavares Daniels. I'm wondering how they'll be able to fare without him. And, Shaquille Cooper, I don't know how they're going to fare with him being questionable as well. But Edmonton, as we know, is a team that's really, really struggled defensively. So once again, Drew, I have to say I'm going with the over in this one. We've got a quarterback for Montreal, Antonio Pipkin. He's been named the starter for week 1. And like I mentioned to you last week, Drew, in our preview show, and we were talking about each team, I felt there was too much pressure really with Antonio Pipkin when Johnny Manziel was around. And I want to make it clear that when I say that, I don't mean that it's not like a challenge is a good thing and a QB battle isn't a good thing, but I feel like it's really good for Antonio Pipkin to be named that starter early in the preseason, for him to know the coaching staff has that confidence in him. And he's really come out and said, he sounded very mature to me. He said that he's ready to lead this team in any way he can. He's not worried about personal stats. He's worried about team stats. And he wants to be a part of the greatness of developing this team back to the team they once were, when a guy like Anthony Calvillo was on this team. Because, growing up for me, Drew, the Montreal Alouettes were an outstanding team. They were a team that was always at the top. And now, like I mentioned, they haven't been great in years. So hopefully Antonio Pipkin can do what he can to try and, change things. It's also important to mention that they did part ways with head coach Mike Sherman. There was rumors going around that, he wasn't really working well with the players. The players didn't like him. and he also didn't adapt very well to the CFL. And that's one of those things, Drew, where a lot of coaches, quarterbacks, receivers, anyone really, sometimes it's tough to adapt to different rules or different play style and just a different way the game is. So they now went over to offensive coordinator Kari Jones, and players were happy with that decision. He seems to be a really big players coach, and I think that's exactly what this Montreal team needs during this desperate time. And looking at a guy here, Devere Posey, signing a 2-year deal in the offseason. He spent time with the Baltimore Ravens. It didn't really work out with them, so he joined the Lions last year, grabbed 29 receptions for 395 receiving yards, 3 touchdowns across 8 games. I really wanted to mention his name because I believe Posey brings that experience level, that consistency level, and that flair that Montreal really needs. And a team like Edmonton as well, you got to look at their running back position as one of those ones you got to really rely on with a guy like CJ Gable. He's been a guy that was absolutely outstanding for them on a consistent basis every single week last year. A lot of games where their defense was letting them down, CJ Gable would come back out there on the offense, and just dominate the game and consistently, no matter what. The opposing team knew he was coming. He was able to kind of, find those holes and find some separation and make way. So both these two teams have improved. Both these two teams are different than they were last year. And overall, I'm going to look at the over in this one. I think that we're going to see a lot of shock here on the offense, Alouettes. I think a lot of people are going to be surprised what they see from them. I think we'll see a great performance once again this year from BJ Cunningham at the slot back position for the Alouettes. I think we'll see a great performance from Eugene Lewis at the wide receiver position. And, of course, like I mentioned, aforementioned Devere Posey will be great. So I actually have a play posted, Drew, on the website, sportsmemo.com, on the side for this one. But as for now, I'm looking at over the total. We should see some points in this one, and I do expect this to be a very, very exciting game. However, I will say it's going to be a lot of pressure to see if we'll see Trevor Harris go deep downfield too often, or he'll keep the passes short because, like I said, he's with his new team, and change is a very important thing for the first couple of weeks. So I'm looking forward to seeing how Trevor Harris adapts to his new team. But as we know, Coach Moss and Edmonton Eskimos really like to go downfield and take a lot of shots, take a lot of risks. So this one should be a very exciting contest, and I'm looking over the total with this one here. And also, like I said, you can find my side play, 5% play, opening week 1 best bet at sportsmemo.com.
All right, good stuff, McGinnis. And we got 2. So the schedule sets up 1 game on Thursday, 1 on Friday, 2 on Saturday. And it looks like the marquee game here is the Ottawa Red Blacks versus the Calgary Stampeders, 7 p.m. Saturday night, talking Eastern time, so 4 p.m. Pacific here. This is the regular season champion of the East Division last year, the Ottawa Red Blacks, finishing 11-7, and on the West side, the Calgary Stampeders finished 13-5, heading into the playoffs. We got 52.5 being the total, -7.5. Calgary laying at home. We are seeing some 8s pop up here, so Calgary taking some money at home. What are you thinking for Ottawa Calgary here, McGinnis?
Yeah, Drew, that's no surprise. The public loves Calgary. People love to bet on Calgary. They've pretty much been dominating this team this league for the past several years. It's been a clear shot. But I will say, before we get things going with this really match here, this game, I do want to say, Drew, out of all the past 5, even really 6, 7, 8 years, this league this year is going to be, I'll call it right now, the Week 1 podcast. It's going to be one of the closest we've seen this league in several years. A lot of people saw over the past couple of years, Calgary was sure betting favorites. But now we take a look at it. They're not that strong of favorites. They're at the top of the list. But, you've got teams like BC right behind them, Hamilton, just shortly behind them. So I feel like it's a good thing to see this kind of diversity in the league and seeing other teams shortly improve. But when you look at this one, like you mentioned, we're seeing the number move a little bit to 8. It was opened up at 7, went to 7.5, then 8. I like Ottawa. I like where that number is going. They can keep moving up all they want, Drew, because I like Ottawa in this game here. Calgary saw a lot of changes during their offseason. They lost quite a few players. But it's very important for me to mention that Kamar Jordan, a very, very important piece to this Calgary team, a slot back for this team. He's on the injury reserve. He will not play in week 1. And also, Reggie Begelton, a guy that they're really going to be relying on. He's listed as questionable for week 1 here this week. So I believe Bo Levi Mitchell is going to either, one, have to go to Eric Rogers quite a bit, or he's going to have to look at Don Jackson to dominate that running game, which also makes me look towards the under in this game. And you and I have mentioned, we talked about it last week, and you actually know Dominic Davis from watching him in college over on the Ottawa Red Black side. I'm looking at him, and I saw his power of his arm, but I really do think that we're going to come into this one, and there's been a lot of changes, like I keep mentioning that word, for the Ottawa Red Blacks team. And I feel like of all games during this week 1, change is going to affect both of these teams significantly. And we saw Ottawa really step up their defense in the playoffs last year over the past, the last 5 weeks of the season. We take a look at the Grey Cup. This is a Grey Cup rematch. Let's not forget, 27-16. And this Ottawa team struggled to score. Calgary's defense was good. They lost a few key pieces, but they're still solid. And they're only able to put up 16 points. So my two leans in this one and my thoughts are going to be taking Ottawa plus the 8 points, and we're going under 52 points here in this one. I think we're going to see a lot of sloppiness, a lot of confusion to start things out in this game. And although it seems like it's a really built-up game, like you mentioned, Drew, a lot of people are high on this game. Of course, the Grey Cup rematch, it's a very smart marketing tool, having them as the opening week 1 game. I think it's going to be a little bit of a shocker for some people how Ottawa keeps this one close. So we'll lay the points with Ottawa. We'll take them plus 8, and we'll go under 52 points.
All right, again, so we got the nightcap on Saturday. Doubleheader here, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. Winnipeg at the BC Lions. BC Lions -2, 51.5 or 52 being the total.
Yeah, this one's a really good one here, Drew. This one is going to lead to my best bet of the podcast, which I'd like to do each week for the listeners out there. And this one here is interesting because I've been talking pretty much for the past several weeks, whether it's on here with the podcast with you or on my personal Twitter account, about how much I really, really like BC. And one of the reasons is, like I've told you, I love Mike Riley as a quarterback. I think he's outstanding. I think he's everything perfect for a CFL quarterback. His ability to escape the pocket, his ability to be so mobile even at his age. But not just that, just the powerful, accurate arm he has. Like I mentioned, I've compared him to the Aaron Rodgers in the NFL. I think he's just like that here in the CFL. I can't wait to see what he does with a guy like Deron Carter, Brian Burnham. But like I said, I think it's going to take some time for this team to really gel together, to get things going, and really kind of get their act together. And when you look at a team like Winnipeg, they don't really have to deal with that issue whatsoever. I mean, they've got their team ready. They've got a lot of the same guys back. We've got a quarterback like Mac Nichols. He's healthy now. He's ready to go. Important to mention, number 2 guy, Chris Streveler at quarterback. He did a great job last year filling in for Matt Nichols when he was injured. And a guy like Andrew Harris, he's just outstanding. Harris is a huge key for Winnipeg last year in the playoffs when they defeated the Saskatchewan Roughriders. 19 rushes, 153 yards, or a touchdown, and adding 2 catches as well. He was outstanding, and he's great for them each week. He's so resilient. He doesn't matter if they go to him every single play. He gets the job done. And we can't forget about a guy like Darvin Adams and, of course, Nick Dempsey at the receiving position. I just think this Winnipeg team is going to be too much for this BC Lions team. It's going to be a matter of them getting defensive stops and not allowing BC to build up any kind of chemistry, momentum, and that kind of thing. Because when I look at it right now, as strong as BC's defense is, and that's going to really have to help them out early in the season, I see BC developing into a good team over the next several weeks. But for right now, Winnipeg is up there right at the top of my charts in the power rankings for the CFL, Drew. And we're going ahead and taking them as our best bet here on the podcast. We're taking them +2 best bet podcast material. And we're also going with a lean on the under 52. But I'll tell you, Drew, I love that spot here with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers.
All right, so Winnipeg +2 for the podcast free play here. We got what you said, Devin Adams, the wide receiver. He had a stint with the Carolina Panthers, and he finds himself in the CFL on the Blue Bombers. You think he's a pretty good weapon, huh?
Darvin Adams is outstanding, and he's a guy that he can pretty much do it all. You know, if you throw him a 4-yard toss, he's going to run and make something out of it, or he can also, you know, be a deep threat. And that's what I like about him. And this whole real Blue Bombers receiving core is that, you know, they can really do everything and really always keep you guessing. So that's definitely a game I'm going to have my eyes on, and I can't wait to watch here in opening week 1. I got to say, Drew, the CFL did a great job with their matchups here in week 1. You look at these games, you're not going to see, you know, too many, you know, terrible games here this weekend. I will say that. No matter what the scores end up being in this one, I think nobody will be bored watching these, and these are great games to really open up this season. And as you can tell, hopefully in my voice, Drew, I'm fired up. Can't wait. I got some notes all in front of me. My house has been a mess with just papers with CFL writing all over it. I'm using my printer this week more than I ever have, and I can't wait for it. So my play is posted. My 5% best bet is posted on the website at sportsmemo.com. And as for that, those are my thoughts for CFL Week 1.
Yeah, good stuff, McGinnis. And I brought him up just because he went to Auburn, as did I. And it's always fun to see these guys make it and still be playing football, even though not in the NFL. It's one of the things I really love about the CFL is to follow some of these college football players. Like, he had just under 2,000 yards receiving for Auburn, was a wide receiver on the national championship team in 2010, catching passes from Cam Newton. So just one of the little tidbits of what makes CFL, you know, really great. And a lot of the listeners out there, you know, being college football fans, having football now playing, even though it's only June, is a big plus of the CFL, McGinnis.
No, absolutely, Drew. And I'm actually happy you brought that up because I forgot to mention it. I had it written down here. One thing for Edmonton, they lost a guy like Duke Williams. He went NFL bound, and Brian Mitchell as well. So the thing is, you mentioned about how it's great for those guys to get a chance to kind of get to keep their football careers alive. But also, it's interesting for the league because although it doesn't happen a lot of times, you know, great receiving corps could slip up a little bit because some of their best players are getting promoted and going to the NFL. So that's also a very important thing to watch preseason and also at certain points in the season when, you know, players are talking about maybe I don't want to be here anymore. Maybe I'm too good for the league. So it's interesting to hear that, and you really learn which players are in the CFL to stay and which players are in there to try and get a shot with the NFL.
Good stuff, McGinnis. And we'll have McGinnis on every Tuesday going forward for every game on the board in the CFL, so you can mark your calendars here. And check out his stuff at sportsmemo.com. He's got his 5% top-rated play for Week 1 CFL, but even more cost-effective, you can get his opening month, for just $99, or even full season for $299, under $300. You can get his full season. The coupon code is what, McGinnis?
CFL299.
CFL299 at checkout for his full season. So good stuff, McGinnis. We'll talk with you next Tuesday. Guys, best of luck. Thanks for tuning in.